screen. And then I am going to share my presentation. So again, my name is Aletha Williams, and I really do appreciate seeing each and every one of you here. A little bit about myself. I am a 1994 graduate, and I'm not going to go all into this, but one of the things that I am currently doing is I'm a Ph.D. student in mind and body medicine, in the track right now doing my dissertation on what is the lived experience of somatic restoration to the body using the facilitated by equine facilitated therapy. And equine is horses. And so there's a lot of research behind that. And so that is my dissertation. And I just wanted to speak on that I'm excited to really try to find different complementary alternative methods to help our veterans heal from their trauma or from other events that in their careers. A quick brief agenda is I'm going to go over the definition of biofeedback, how biofeedback works, the proper versus maladaptive stress response, ideal body function, importance of the breath, and then we're going to end with a quick 3 to 4 minute diaphragmatic breathing exercise. And that last portion, if you do not feel like participating, please just don't. You don't have to. It's not mandatory. Biofeedback is pretty young science. It's 50 years old. It is a evidence-based method that uses monitoring instrument to measure and provide feedback about the physiological parameters of our bodies, i.e., our heart rate, our respiration, our sweat response, our skin temperature, and our brain activity. We use it in therapy in several different ways. The first one is neurofeedback. I am not going to pronounce that first word, but it's called neurofeedback. And what they do is they hook sensors to your brain and allow your brain to rewire, refire, and create new synapses for people who are having brainwave pattern issues such as seizures, ADHD, learning disability, migraine or tension headaches. There's a big difference. Traumatic brain injury, sleep disorders. Another form of biofeedback is the electrographic biofeedback, where they hook up sensors to certain muscle areas. Some muscles do not fire. For instance, folks who have incontinence, we hook up the sensors down in that area and we allow them to tense the muscle. Their brain cannot feel it. And so therefore, when they see on the computer that they are clenching, then it creates a new synaptic firing in their brain so that it can start connecting back somatically to their bodies. Another form is breathing biofeedback. There's a lot of people who have difficulty where they might have rapid overbreathing or holding their breath. And so therefore they're having chest compression, chest issues. And so we work on their breathing for them to give them ideal breathing functionality. Thermal biofeedback, some folks, when they have stress and they're overstressed, their body temperature actually go down. And so we hook up sensors to the fingers and teach them how to actually, through a thought, increase their body temperature. And so that takes a lot. It just doesn't happen the first time. I want to say biofeedback is not a one-time deal. It takes a good about 7 weeks for the body to really come into functionality, to fire and wire those new synaptic nerves, as well as developing a behavior. They say it takes 21 days to develop a new habit. And then habit then turns into a behavior by cycling again for 2 more cycles of 21. So 63 days. So we also do galvanic stress response, where we hook it up again to our fingers for sweat response. Some folks have issues sweating, or they oversweat because they're stressed. And so we monitor that and allow them to become aware of what's going on in their bodies. The most common one is heart rate variability. We see that a lot on our watches, and heart rate variability occurs when we have, if we are cycling through an activation or a triggered cycle, our heart rate goes up, which is bad for our overall heart rate variability. And so we want to have lower heart rate variability. And so it's quite opposite. Increased heart rate, not good for heart rate variability. Like I said, biofeedback is 50 years old. It is holistic and evidence-based. When I say evidence-based, it means that it's been researched quantitatively and qualitatively and is backed by a lot of evidence to show that it works. It is non-invasive, non-pharmaceutical. We literally just take 2 electrodes or 3, sometimes 4, and hook it up onto the body, and then we monitor the electrical activity as it goes through the body, or the sweat intensity, or the temperature. The basic paradigm about biofeedback is whenever we provide a human being with feedback about biological process, it enables the individual to increase awareness of the process and gains conscious control. So the ultimate goal of biofeedback is to empower you to realize that your thoughts are very powerful. And when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. And that is from Wayne Dwyer, by the way. Basic understanding about biofeedback is electricity travels as either direct current or alternating current. For biofeedback, most of the I would say all of the things in biofeedback use direct current, and direct current is from point A to point B. And that was discovered in the 1700s by Galvani, where he discovered that muscles generate electricity. And so from those, if we put the electrodes on one point to another point, we can measure that electrical activity and therefore give you back the feedback that you need for your body. And so again, biofeedback monitors skin temperature, respiration, the electrical activity in your brain, blood volume pulse. For blood flow, sometimes we have constricted vessels from stress because our sympathetic nervous system is activated and the blood volume actually lowers. And so we can monitor that. And another phrase I want to emphasize is anything that can be measured can change. Anything that can be measured can change. And so while we can't rid our minds and our bodies of all stress, we can learn to regulate it to a healthy condition. And I mentioned the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, but I want to just breeze right through it real quickly. We have in the autonomic nervous system 4 elements. The parasympathetic, which talks about when our bodies are relaxed and it's not, you feel safe and your body is doing the normal function, it's breathing right, it's digesting all of your food or whatever else is in your system. Whereas the sympathetic nervous system prepares you for fight or flight or flee, fight, freeze or flee, where it constricts the blood vessels and take away oxygen, vital oxygen to non-vital or systems such as your kidneys or your liver or your brain. It pumps all that into the muscles so that you can get ready to fight, freeze, or flee. And then you have your afferent and the etheric system, which talks about the gut area. And sometimes when you have that gut feeling something is wrong, so we talk about that portion of the nervous system. But what I want you to remember is para or paralyzed that's not what it's doing, but para meaning rest, relax, whereas sympathetic means you're ready to fight, freeze, or flee. And we want to get our body in ideal functionality in our parasympathetic mode. And so when we talk about maladaptive stress response, we want to talk about how if we cycle and get activated too many times for our fight, flight, or freeze mode, that takes us out of mode and out of functionality into a maladaptive state. We know about the organic stressors. We know about the environmental stressors. We know that stress comes in many ways. So quick, if we were to take a drip of oil and trace it to the fuel tank, I'm not going to go into too much detail. The brain activates and releases noradrenaline on a normal activity. If I'm driving and I see a deer, quickly my body goes into fight, flight, or freeze. It releases noradrenaline, which releases and brings me back to homeostasis when I know I'm safe. The opposite, though, if our thought, and this is one of the things about humans, is we can activate our sympathetic nervous system by thought alone, meaning we remember something or we get activated or triggered by an event or smell or someone or something. We get activated and we get into that sympathetic system. It actually releases adrenaline And that is the one that stays in our muscles and gets stored. And Bessel van der Pol and Stephen Porges and Peter Levine have been very pivotal researchers in showing us that the body, if the adrenaline is not released properly, if it's not allowed to go through its complete cycle and bring us back to homeostasis, it stays trapped in our bodies. And that is what we're trying to use in biofeedback, to allow you to feel safe again in your body so that that adrenaline can dissipate through your body. There's other methods to release it, but it takes repetition, as we say. And so through repetition, your body will start eventually feel safe to restore the cell back to proper functionality. Our breathing increases, the mucus dries in our membrane, so to allow faster air to transport to our lungs in case the body needs to run. And our sweat glands increases to refresh our, freshen our bodies because our body temperature goes up. The mind becomes very alert and focused and grasping the clues for survival. So we are super alert and ready to fight, flee, or freeze. In biofeedback, this chart is really important, and this presentation will be available to everyone. Ideal functionality for breathing is between we say we're calm, 12 to 14 breaths. Normal, 12 to 20 breaths per minute. And overreactive is 14 to 20 breaths per minute. Hyperventilation is when you're doing 20 breaths per minute, which is really not good for our bodies. Our heart rate, ideally, a healthy heart rate should be between 60 and 80 beats per minute. And normal, 80 to 100. If it's over 100, you get tachycardia, where your heart rate is beating too fast. And sometimes it requires medicine to get you back into a normal or healthy state. We mentioned heart rate variability, and it's a low number. 10 beats per minute is healthy. 20 for the adolescents, 3 to 6 for adults that are older than 60 years old, and 25 to 40 for an athlete. So biofeedback begins with becoming aware of the breath. Awareness of the breath brings the mind to focus on the present moment. And in the present moment, the mind becomes aware of thoughts, emotions, which drive how energy is then activated or stored in the body. And as I mentioned again, Dr. Porges and Dr. Van der Pol research report that if the body cannot complete the stress cycle correctly, the adrenaline and the cortisol created to respond to a perceived or actual threat is stored in the body's muscles. And that over time, if we cycle our stress by thought alone, becomes maladaptive. And our muscles and our brain synapses sometimes do not fire and wire correctly. So I want to talk a little bit about effortless breathing, the ideal normal breathing. I mentioned 12 to 14 is normal, but ideal effortless breathing is between 6 to 8 breaths per minute. And in that, you feel this calmness coming over your body and your mind, and it evokes this internal quietness, this mindfulness, and this peripheral warming. Effortless breathing encourages a slow respiration rate. And then effortless breathing also is characterized by smooth flow rate. And I will show you a graph of effortless breathing in 2 more slides. Dysfunctional breathing pattern includes breathing, holding, and bracing of the upper chest. So some people hold their shoulders up, or they fold their shoulders forward, and now your pectorals are tight, or they arch their back and they hold it in their lower back. So that is dysfunctional breathing. This graph shows the top one in red is not a good breathing pattern. It's all over the place. What we do in biofeedback is we train our clients to breathe in coherence. And what happens with that 6 to 8 breaths per minute is your heart rate and your respiration sync. They start to sync and they start to move in this pattern that looks like a sine wave. Because the heart rate and the respiration starts syncing, the brain wave slows down and also goes into coherence with the body. So mind, body, and eventually when you're so aware, your spirit starts to sync and you become more mindful of what's going on. especially if you're triggered or activated by something. You can become aware of this through practice of biofeedback to help you to change your breathing, to bring it into parasympathetic mode. Ultimately, this graph kind of speaks everything about biofeedback. It's a mind shift. It allows you to reflect and repeat. It allows you to apply what you know, connect to your mind and your body, and to educate your body itself and your internal voice to become more aware of that we are powerful beings and our thoughts can change the way our emotions are affected and the way our bodies heal. Typical 5-step hookup for biofeedback is we hook up the electrodes, we start measuring the body's electricity. It all depends on what the client comes to, but a typical client gets their breathing measured, their fingers, and also we do the heart rate. So that's just the basic. And then if they have other issues, i.e. TMJ or sciatic issues, we hook up other electrons to that portion of the body. So the feedback from the electric activity is displayed on a monitor, and through an exercise that I take them through, we are able to see how the thought literally changes the temperature, the heart rate, and so forth. Or if I tell them to clench a muscle, whether there is whether there's electrical activity going through it or not. If there's no electrical activity, then we're going to have to train that muscle more to start firing and wiring. And so the protocol is pretty simple. It's safe. It's, again, non-invasive. Some people have issues being touched. That is something that I definitely work with the client with before I do that. So week 1 is about talking to the client, allowing the client to tell me what makes them feel safe, and talking about what it is that we need to do for sessions for week 2 to 4. So week 1 to 4 is about orientating and practicing what needs to happen to start feeling and trusting ourselves and our minds and our bodies. Week 5, week 5, they are well aware and they actually snap into that relaxation phase a lot faster once we hook them up. Week 6, they are able to regulate themselves. They learn to rapidly relax as well. And then week 7, they're assertive. They have small wins and they start becoming very empowered in the fact that they now know how to change the way their thoughts and how their bodies respond to a stress response. Again, a cell that fires together wires together. And so neurons that fire out of sync loses their link, and that's what we don't want. And so we use the breath to get ourselves back into coherence. This picture just shows the different areas in which we will hook up a client. Many different areas, many different issues. So again, a client comes to us, for instance, with TMJ. This is what it would look like. We will attach the electrodes to those areas and have them clench and relax, clench and relax. It all depends on the electrical activity that's going through it. Whether the left side or the right side will determine which side is activating more. And that's the one that we have them clench less or softer so that they can become more aware of relaxing the jaw more, eventually not tightening it when they're stressed. Or if they hold their stress in their shoulders or their traps or their pectorals, we hook them up like this. The sciatic joint nerve, is the longest nerve in the body. So when we arch our back and we hold our tension in our lower back, over time, the sciatic nerve actually gets into trouble, and we have to learn how to relax that lower back, tilt that pelvic forward to relax that tension in the body, in the lower back. These are some of the references. There are plenty more references. So if you have any questions, guys, I am more than happy to talk to you more about it later. But the most important thing you must do to exist is to breathe. And breathing is gold. It is the new gold. And I would love to let you know that you have the power to change the way you look at things. Thank you so much. if you have any questions, just please feel free to unmute and I will be able to answer your questions.
This introduction, and let's see, are my slides up? Okay, this walking electromagnetic pulse needs to verify and make sure that's okay. So great. Again, thank you for having me here today. It is pretty amazing to be part of this group of phenomenal alumni who from the Naval Academy have put this together. So I'm especially excited. I get to share airtime today with my classmate, Aletha Williams. So great to be able to share what we do on a routine basis in working with trauma survivors. So a brief intro on what I'm going to cover today. I'll share a little bit more about my background. We're going to breathe together because Aletha talked so much about breathing. I'm pretty excited. We're going to take a few moments and breathe together. I'm going to give a very brief summary of how trauma can manifest in the levels of body, mind, and spirit. Talked about that earlier in our webinar series in February, and hopefully we can put a link to that discussion if you are curious on more than 94 seconds of that summary and want to hear the longer version. We've got a link to where that is hung. I'll then talk about acupuncture from both a Western and an Eastern perspective, because I think it's really important to understand a little bit about this style of medicine before we jump in and discuss what types of protocols you can use, acupressure protocols, to manage some very common PTSD symptoms. And then I'll open it up for any questions at the end. So with that, this is a slide. Everybody's got one. This one is mine. This documents my journey. And as the longer I walk in this body, the more things keep showing up on this slide. And I've had the good fortune to experience a lot. One thing that's not particularly well documented here is my personal journey with trauma. Like many people, trauma is part of my genetic inheritance. My father was a childhood POW in World War II in a Japanese prison camp in Indonesia. And my mother, although maybe less ghastly, but certainly no less formative, was the survivor of a small town Pennsylvania, less than amicable parental divorce in the 1950s. So I got some interesting trauma from both sides, and to that genetic inheritance, I have added my own journeys, experiences, and my first experience with that was while on deployment in Southeast Asia. My crew had the good fortune to be part of a series of search and rescue missions. And for those of you who are not Navy and not familiar with this relic that you can see on the screen here, the mighty P3, which we would say we like to protect tomorrow with yesterday. This fine piece of gear, she is no longer flying. But she traditionally goes out to look for submarines and to track them, and if necessary, drop torpedoes on them. But we were doing search and rescue, and my crew did 4 search and rescue missions. We were able to save 44 lives, but we lost an additional 30 folks at sea. And that was really difficult for me and my whole crew to wrestle with and recover from. So we all experienced PTSD a little bit differently through that. And then a few months later, coming off of deployment, I was in a very serious car accident. I flipped a Jeep Wrangler 5 times and broke my neck and hit my head. So major TBI, and that was a lot to have to figure out how to work through. Fortunately, I made it through that experience, and I discovered other ways of healing through trauma, and that set me on the journey to becoming a healthcare provider and working very closely with trauma survivors now. Although I was unable to fly after my car accident, I was able to continue my service, and I'm now a reservist. And I can't believe I get to say this. I get to do acupuncture research for the Department of the Navy. It's crazy. But I'm looking at its efficacy in treating both PTSD and also phantom limb pain. So that's a little bit about my background. And now hopefully that'll put some context for what we're going to talk about next. All right, so we're going to breathe together. Aletha teed that up beautifully, so thank you for that. Let's try some diaphragmatic breathing. In standard military format, we're going to brief, we're going to execute, and then we'll debrief a little bit. So we're going to take 5 deep breaths together. You can put your hand on your belly or not, whatever serves you. Then what I want you to do with your inhales, I want you to feel like you're filling your belly with air. And as a bioengineer, I know the air is not actually going to leave your lungs. I get that, but that's the movement we're going for. I would like you to take a pause between your inhalation and your exhalation. And then when you start to exhale, work with all the muscles of your core and try and put the back of your navel on the front of your spine. That's also not going to happen. But again, that's the movement we're going for. So let's give it a shot. Go ahead and put your feet flat on the floor. Find a comfortable space. You put your hand on your belly or not. Open your eyes, close your eyes, whatever serves you. And let's take a nice deep breath in. Fill your belly with air. Pause. And exhale, engaging all the muscles of your core. Work to try and put your navel on your spine. Let's take another nice deep breath in. Pause, relax your shoulders, and exhale. Awesome. Let's do it again. Nice deep breath in. Pause, relax your ankles, and exhale. Again, engaging all the muscles of your core. Work to try and get your navel on your spine. Let's take another nice deep breath in. Pause, relax your eyeballs, and exhale. And last time, nice deep breath in. Pause, and exhale. Again, engaging all the muscles of your core. Work to try and put your navel on your spine. Awesome. Now we can all be present together. Okay, so now I want to talk very briefly about trauma, PTSD, and resiliency. And yeah, too much. Let me sum up, to quote Inigo Montoya. Let's talk briefly about what trauma is. The DSM-5, or I had to write this down because I always forget, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-5 refers to a traumatic experience as something that is either actual or threatened, death, serious injury, or sexual violence. And so that is a traumatic event. Just because you witness a traumatic event does not necessarily mean that you will develop PTSD. That doesn't mean that trauma will get its hooks into you and then you will suffer from that. So how this differs, I had a great discussion with one of my classmates who was then one of the battalion officers for the Wounded Warriors program. And we were chatting about trauma and how it manifests. And he said, man, Jill, it makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. I've got a Marine here who he lost a leg at an IED explosion, but that's not why he has PTSD. He has PTSD because he was hanging out in the chow hall and they took an incoming mortar and it killed both of his friends. That's why he has PTSD. He says, I don't get it. I said, well, if you think about it, kind of relative to his boundaries, right? He went into a war zone thinking, okay, cost of business, I might lose a limb. This is what it means to be a Marine. So that was an expected outcome. His being in a safe space and taking an incoming hit and watching his 2 friends die, that was supposed to be a safe space. And there his boundaries were violated. So I think, although there are a lot of things at play here, I think trauma tends to get its hooks into you once you have your boundaries violated. So we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about boundaries in a moment. I really like what a colleague of mine, she's also a fantastic mentor, Elaine Duncan, and you'll hear her name here shortly. she describes trauma and its effect really getting into your system as being too much, too fast, without enough support. And I think many folks who experience military sexual trauma certainly can relate to that. So trauma can manifest on all levels of body, mind, and spirit, and it can really wreak havoc on your whole system. And the most important thing I hope you'll take away today is that you do not have to stay in this dysregulated space, right? We know from epigenetics, and that's the study of how our genes actually manifest, how they show themselves. It used to be we understood you get this from your biological mom and this from your biological dad, and you either got in a good line or you got in a crummy line, and that's kind of what you had to deal with. And what we're learning now from this relatively new discipline within biology is that trauma can shift the way our genes can express themselves, but it is not a permanent shift. So we can invite our genes to express themselves a different way. So that's quite lovely. Dr. Porges and Aletha referred to these. Dr. Porges, who developed the polyvagal theory, and Dr. Peter Levine, who developed somatic experiencing, they have, there's kind of a natural way through which we move through a traumatic experience. And sometimes we can get caught up in that process and not fully complete it. And that's why we wrestle with PTSD. So what each Dr. Porges, Dr. Levine, Dr. von der Kolk, and Elaine Duncan all agree on is that you do not have to stay in this dysregulated space. So just as if, you break your arm, you know that you're going to heal from that, and you'll have to do some PT. You'll have to, remind your arm how it's supposed to function again, but you will heal from it. And experiencing trauma and wrestling with PTSD, you will heal from it. So it is possible. You are not permanently damaged. You are not permanently injured. You are temporarily injured and can move forward through that. So with that background on trauma, PTSD, and what it means to be resilient, let's talk about acupuncture. And this is where I'm sad that it is, I don't have the opportunity to hear what people think, because I always like to ask, what do you think it is that I do with these needles? And I get some pretty interesting responses. So unfortunately, I won't be able to hear that say, but what acupuncture is the use of these tiny single-use disposable stainless steel needles, or can be other types of needles as well, other metals. And it's used to help regulate your body's systems. What's it good for? 3 words: the human condition. It's good for pretty much everything. In our society right now, we understand that acupuncture has been proven effective as a pain management tool. And if you go to the VA and you have some sort of pain management concern, you can ask to be referred out for acupuncture. If they do not have an acupuncture clinic at the local VA hospital, or it's too far for you to get to the local one, then you can go through the community care network and find an acupuncture provider. So coming back, most people are aware that it's really good for pain management. And my favorite article, if you can have one, yes, I'm going to nerd out on you. My favorite article about acupuncture was published in the Journal of Emergency Medicine. And that was back in 2016. Grissa and friends did an interesting experiment. They compared acupuncture and morphine on pain management in an ER setting. And what they found was acupuncture outperformed morphine in acute pain management, which is fantastic because, in case you were not aware, there is an ongoing opioid epidemic in our country, and that the side effects associated with opioids are not there for acupuncture. So pretty fantastic, well understood to support pain management, but it also treats on the levels of mind and spirit in addition to the body. So how does it work? This is also a great question. I'd love to hear what people think. I was just giving a talk at the Office of Naval Research a month ago, and my favorite response was voodoo. And I said, well, we do not actually have a good understanding. There you go. There's a picture. We don't understand how things work on the cellular level from a Western medical perspective. We really don't understand what happens. We've got little bits and pieces where we think we understand, but we do not yet have the technology to understand how it works. I can talk to you about how it works very specifically from an East Asian medical perspective, and we're going to talk a little bit about that now. So again, from the East Asian medical perspective, it's very similar to the Western perspective in that we know that the body's goal is to maintain balance, right? To maintain homeostasis. And there are several windows of functioning that are really important, very narrow windows, right? Aletha was talking about heart rate. If it gets too fast or too slow, you can get into trouble very, very quickly. Similarly with blood sugar, pH, body temperature, if you get outside the standard operating window, things go south very quickly. So in East Asian medical theory, we add an additional aspect to how we can maintain balance or homeostasis throughout the body. And that is the flow of chi or life force energy. And it has been studied for thousands of years. And this life force energy makes a circuit that starts in the body, goes out to the hands, up to the head, down to the feet, and back to the torso. And it makes this circuit pretty much over 3 different lines across the body, but it still makes that same traditional circuit. And this is the best part. If this life force energy is smoothly flowing throughout the body, you'll never get any older and you'll never die. Awesome. The problem is we're human. And so the choices we make and the experiences we have, those that are chosen and those that are forced upon us, can impact that smooth flow of chi. So you can get little kinks in the system. And I'm going to switch to, instead of a circuit, because I did not do very well in EE, we're going to shift over to the use of a garden hose. If you get a kink in a garden hose, you know, you get high pressure before the kink and really nothing much after, trickle, trickle, trickle. It's the same thing. You can get an energetic kink throughout this circuit. And so you get too much energy before the kink and not enough afterwards. So it's these sometimes local imbalances that set up, and sometimes they're systemic that really can cause some problems on how your system is functioning. So what I do as an acupuncturist, I use these tiny little needles to insert it at very well-studied points to open up those blockages, to reestablish that smooth flow of energy so that the body can then heal herself. And that sounds a lot like resiliency. So that's my favorite description of resiliency. But what's great is, although, yes, you can see an acupuncturist who has studied for many years to, not thousands, I'm not that old yet, but has studied for many years to be able to help your body find balance. You can use, and anyone can use, gentle pressure on these acupoints, these places where acupuncturists use these key points across the body to help maintain balance. So let's talk a little bit about how we can do that. Today, I'm going to cover a series of protocols, and these are to help manage some very common PTSD symptoms. The first one, and I mentioned boundaries earlier, most people who have experienced sexual assault have had their boundaries violated. And it's very difficult for many trauma survivors to reestablish healthy boundaries and remember where you end and the rest of the world begins. So we're going to do that's going to be the first protocol we look at, is how can we shore up those boundaries? Another thing a lot of people struggle with is anger. And it can be anger towards self, from, the before time self. It can be anger with others for what they did or what they failed to do. regardless of where it's coming from, anger is a very common symptom. So we'll talk about what we can do to calm your system overall, right? Aletha talked about if you start spooling up and jumping into fight or flight, coupled with diaphragmatic breathing, we will hold some points, or I'll show you where these points are so that you can practice these protocols at home or in the office or in the conference room. You can take them everywhere. Pretty awesome. Okay, so mellowing anger, we'll talk about breaking out of repetitive thoughts, very common. Facilitating going to sleep, staying asleep, that is very common. Oh, look, it's 2:14. Yet again, I am wide awake. That is very common for people who are under stress, and certainly those who are wrestling with PTSD fall into that category. We'll talk about helping out with nighttime disturbances, be those nightmares or night sweats. And then probably my favorite point, actually, Kristen and I were talking about this, my favorite acupuncture point, especially when working with trauma survivors, is on your thumb, and it helps to find one's voice. So we'll talk about that one. And then, oh my gosh, there are too many words that Jill said. I can't understand. I don't remember any of them. We'll talk about how you can just maintain overall balance. So that'll be the last thing we discuss. Now, I love this saying in East Asian medicine, where your breath goes, your chi will follow. So wherever you send your breath, your chi will follow. Okay, so let's talk about this first protocol. The first one has to do with shoring up those boundaries, right? Regardless of your experience, whatever the initiating event was, chances are good you had your boundaries violated. And so let's help your system reestablish where you end and the rest of the world begins. So this particular protocol is comprised of 2 points, and one of them is on the pericardium channel. It translates to, and I'm not going to try speaking the Chinese of it because that would not go well for anybody involved. The first point is on the pericardium channel. It's right here on the inside of your wrist. It's 3 fingers up from your wrist crease, in between those 2 tendons that run right up your forearm. So you can find that point, you can put your thumb there. And the reason I invite you to put your thumb there is because right on the opposite side is the outer gate. So you have the inner gate here on the underside of your forearm, and then on the outside is your outer gate. And that's on the Sanjiao channel, which is pretty awesome. For a long time, it was, oh, well, it's not really an organ, but they just discovered in, I think it was 2017, the new interstitium organ, which is made up of the 3 metabolic chambers that comprise the Sanjiao channel. So kind of cool. So you hold these gates, you find these gates, you hold them and take 5 deep breaths. So we'll do this just on one side because it's always good to breathe. And so put your feet flat on the floor, find those points, right? So the interior gate on the inside, put your thumb there, put your pointer finger on the other side, and let's take 5 deep breaths. So nice deep breath in. Fill your belly with air, pause, and exhale, engaging all the muscles of your core, work to try, and put your navel on your spine. Let's do that again. Nice deep breath in. Pause, and exhale. Awesome. Nice deep breath in. Pause, relax your shoulders, and exhale. Okay, one more nice breath in. Pause, relax your knees, and exhale, engaging all the muscles of your core. Work to try and put your navel on your spine. And one last breath, nice breath in. Pause, and exhale. Okay, so now you could switch over to the other side because your meridians, all of these points are on both sides. We're not going to do that in the interest of time, But so you do it on one side and then do it on the other and take 5 deep breaths. So again, I love going right after Aletha because she just explained going from shifting from the sympathetic nervous system's governments, like, yeah, I'm ready to go, to a more rest, digest, parasympathetic space. And that's, so this is a really interesting statistic I read. We are supposed to be in the sympathetic nervous system's governance 3% of the time. That means 94 plus 3%, public math, I hope I did that right, plus 3%. What that means is that's where you should be in this rest, digest space. So the more you can breathe to help encourage your system to shift back there, the better. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is just for overall calming your system. And I refer to this protocol to help remember it is I hear my gates in my chest, which makes no sense until I explain it to you. So in order to calm your system, you can do this diaphragmatic breathing, and you can mix it up, you can do it any which way, but there are 2 points we've already seen, right? The inner and the outer gate. We've already seen those boundary points on the wrists. But the first one I want you to start with is Shen Men. And Shen Men is located on this little triangular fossa in your ear, kind of up near the top. And you can hang on to that on both sides and just press there. It is where the well of the Shen, or the spirit, is. So you can just hold that, and you can take 5 deep breaths. And then you can move over to those gates and take 5 deep breaths. And then the last one is the Sea of Tranquility. And there's another translation, which I actually like even better, and it's the Palace of Interior Treasures. And I think that sounds so cool. So this is where your Palace of Interior Treasures rests. So again, find your point in the Shen Men, and you can either take 1 breath here, 1 breath here on your inner and outer gates on each side, and then find that space right in the center of your sternum and take a breath there. Or you could do 3 in each place, or you could do 5, whatever serves you. There are no hard and fast rules. So again, this diaphragmatic breathing with I hear my gates in my chest will help bring everything down a notch or 2. Okay. So the next one, and we will be sharing all of these slides with you. So don't feel like you have to draw perfect anatomy pictures here with us. So you will get those afterwards. Okay, here's one for mellowing my anger. No, you cannot borrow my toothpaste. So what can we do? I really like this one, meditation in movement. So you can sit still and meditate, or you can practice meditation in movement through Tai Chi or yoga. So that's always a practice I encourage. When you feel like you are spooling up, you can do diaphragmatic breathing with everything we just did to calm your system overall, right? I hear my gates in my chest, but then you can add liver 3, which I love this translation of this name to great surge. It's like your anger goes with this great surge. So this point is located on the top of your foot, about 1 inch to 1.5 inches between the long bones going to your big toe and the next toe over. So about 1.5 inches back from the webbing in between those toes. And you'll probably find a little tender spot. Guess what? You just found the point. Okay, so that is a little sassy. So you can hold those points, right? So you can do I hear my gates in my chest, and then you can add great surge or liver 3 and hold on both sides and just press. And you don't have to dig in and press with a lot of pressure. Just hold the point. You'll figure out the right pressure there, and take 5 deep breaths. So each one of our organ systems is functioning at its most effective between a 2-hour window. And it so happens that the liver system, that which detoxifies our body, right? It cleans our blood for us. Thank you, liver. but it also detoxifies the rest of our system in mind and spirit. And when it is out of balance, then the anger can manifest. And it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Was I out of balance first, or did I experience the emotion first? Doesn't matter, right? We just want to regulate regardless of which was out of balance first. So the liver is most active between 1 and 3 in the morning, which is why most people who are under stress will wake up at that time and be unable to go to sleep until 3 or even possibly 5 a.m. So this is a great point for that as well. All right, let's talk about clearing the mind. And there are 2 ways we're going to look at that. One is I can't think, like there's too much. I just can't even get my brain to focus in one direction. I need to be able to think. So again, meditation and movement is great. You can sit still and meditate, also wonderful to free the mind. Then you can do some diaphragmatic breathing again with these points. And I love this one. And I had to put this picture of Bert and Ernie because no matter how many times I look at these 2 guys, I always forget who's got the monobrow. So I needed my little cheat sheet here. So if you were like Bert and you had this spectacular monobrow, it would be right smack in the center of your monobrow. So this point is called yin tong. And there is no, I have not found a good translation for it, but my husband calls it the I don't care point. So basically, if I put a needle here in this point, he's like, I don't care where you put needles anywhere else. So this is a really good one to just kind of bring things down. Yin tong, great point. And so you can do that and take some nice deep breaths with that. And then you can just massage your eyebrows. So start right at the corner of your eyebrow and massage all the way around to the outside. There are so many acupuncture points in there. They're so great. And it feels really, really good. There's some people, when they get a headache, they'll automatically do this. That's an acupuncture point. So right here, close to the bridge of the nose. So you can just massage the eyebrows. So again, hold that point in the middle of Ernie's, no, it is Bert's monobrow, and then massage those eyebrows. Okay, so that's I can't get my thoughts to sync. What about I can't not think? I am stuck in a space where I have repetitive thoughts and they will not shut down. Again, meditation to free the mind, meditation and movement with Tai Chi or yoga. You can do diaphragmatic breathing with all points to calm your system, right? So I hear my gates in my chest, and then add spleen 6. And oh shoot, I was gonna write that down and I forget the greatest yin something. Anyway, it's 4 fingers up from the greatest sticky outy point called the medial malleolus on the inside of your ankle. So if you put your your pinky on the greatest sticky outy point of that medial malleolus and 4 fingers up, kind of in that nice meaty place in your lower leg, you will find a little well, a little kind of space, and that is the point. So you could do this in the boardroom. You just cross your leg, put your foot there, and hold that point, and take 5 breaths. Nobody even needs to know what you're up to. When this affects people a lot is when they are trying to fall asleep and their mind will not shut down. So although you can do this anytime, this is especially good for helping you to calm your system before you go to bed. And I recommend although I was a diver for Navy, it's been a long time since I did much inverted stuff. So I don't prefer to do an inverted yoga pose, but if you are good with that, great, have at it. Or you can lie down on the floor right next to the wall, and you can put your feet up on the wall. So if this is your tuchus, you're kind of close to the wall, this is the wall, and put your feet up on the wall and just sit there for about 5 minutes. And that will anchor and ground you and allow things to spool down. So those are some great things to help with falling asleep. Now let's talk about staying asleep. Nighttime disturbances are very common for people who are wrestling with PTSD. Again, introducing meditation and movement throughout your day, Tai Chi or yoga, fantastic. You can also bring diaphragmatic breathing into the experience as it's happening or just before you go to bed. If you wake up with a nightmare, this is a fantastic point. You can certainly do the boundary points. Hang on to those and breathe. You can use the calm your system. I hear my gates in my chest, also great. But the perfect point for a nightmare can be found by making a gentle fist. And it's where your pinky crosses that top line on your palm, in between the long bones, going to your pinky and your ring finger. So you can put your thumb right there, and then around on the other side, there's another point there. You can hold that one. And again, take 5 deep breaths here and switch over to the other side. You can actually try it before you go to bed and see if that helps to reduce nightmares coming to visit you at night. Another very common one, and sometimes it goes hand in hand with the nightmares, sometimes it does not, is night sweats. So some people wake up and they are totally soaked. Holy cow, I have to change my sheets. Some people wake up and they're just a little dewy. Regardless, anywhere along that spectrum. And this is also really great for folks who are transitioning out of their heavy duty fertility years and going through perimenopause. This is a fantastic point for you. It's just a little bit below your wrist crease, just on the inside of that tendon. And you can hang on to that point and take 5 deep breaths. And that will help balance out your thermostat and kind of settle your temperature regulation. Okay, so those are nighttime disturbances. The last one, and this is, I'm not kidding, Kristen and I were talking about this. Okay, favorite acupuncture point, go. And I said, but actually it's this one. And it is on the lung channel. The lung channel is most impacted by grief. And what I have found with many trauma survivors, many of them have difficulty with certainly with their boundaries because their boundaries have been violated, but they also have a hard time finding their voice to either articulate their experiences, to really release the experience that they've had. Many are told, especially with military sexual trauma, it didn't happen. Nope, you're making that up. Nobody wants to hear it. Please stop talking. Your voice is squashed. So this is a lovely point to help you find your voice, whatever that looks like, and then release your experience. So I love this from like a heavy duty traditional Chinese medicine, hardcore body only way of looking at things. Lung 10 is used to restore the voice after acute laryngitis. I have found that it has been really powerful in restoring the voice for those who have lost it due to trauma. So how do you find this magical point? It is on the palmar side of the hand, just onto the palmar side, along the long bone that goes to your thumb. It's about halfway in between. You'll find it. Oh, look, my voice could use some work. It's a little sensitive, a little tender. So you can just hold this point and take 5 deep breaths and find it on the other side again, right on that long bone going to the thumb. Hold that point and take 5 deep breaths. So my favorite point, yes. Okay, good gravy. I don't remember anything. That was too much, too many slides, too many pictures, too many things. I can't remember any of that. So if there's nothing else you take away, let's go back to the magical promise of East Asian medicine that if you've got perfectly smooth flowing chi, you'll never get any older and you'll never die. Awesome. Human, again, that's the problem. But we can facilitate a smoothing out of that flow of chi. And the way we do that is all of our meridians begin and end in our fingertips and toe tips, right next to the nail bed. So you can pinch on either side of your nail beds on each finger, and you can do it on both sides, right? Because you got meridians on both sides. And, ooh, that feels so good. And then you can also do it on your toes. So maybe I wouldn't do that in the boardroom, but you could certainly do that on your fingers in the boardroom. Depends on your boardroom, I suppose. So what that does is that reminds the body that all energy should continue to flow smoothly and not stagnate, right? Not set up in kinks and have too much or too little energy. Okay, a lot of information. We're going to skip the breathing at the end, and I will open it up now for questions. And if you don't feel comfortable asking questions now, or if you say, ooh, actually, what was that about this? Feel free to send me an email and reach out. I would be happy to answer any questions. And in the meantime, yeah, take good care of yourselves because you are so worth it.